All right. So, welcome to episode one of my new podcast of story and song. I'm your host, John Halbig, and today we are talking about the art of conversation. And my lovely guest today is Amanda Carleton, a fellow writer friend, fellow free thinker, and just all around artist and amazing person. Met originally a few years ago on Instagram, kind of fell in love with our artistic and writer community we found there, and have been enjoying amazing, intelligent conversations ever since. So, Amanda, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi. Hello. My name is Amanda, and I'm just sitting here smiling because you talked about our community that we had a few years back. And so
Mm,
I'm a writer. I'm just again, you kind of hit most of the key points, but writing is still my passion. It's something I do daily, and it's switched over from poetry to conscious thought a bit ago. And with how things are going lately, it's just more of it's all reflections at this point. And so that's kind of what I'm doing now, aside from all the other 5 million things I've got on my plate too, as well, and all the adventures I go down. There's never really a one true thing I do. It's always moving on to the next, and I'm kind of a vagabond in that aspect, in that regard. So yeah.
yep, absolutely. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to kind of leave that part open to you because I know kind of the writing aspect is where I know you, and I also know that there's such a big part of your life where, like you said, you kind of got a million different things going on all at once. So sometimes for me it's a little hard to keep up, and I'm sure it is for you as well with
Well,
with your own
even
life.
right now, people like ask me what I'm doing. I have to stop and I'm like, what am I doing? And I'm like, what do you think I'm
Hmm.
doing? Like, maybe you have a better concept of what's going on in this life because
Right?
I get so abstract in my thought. I'm like, I don't know yet right now, but I'll figure it out. And then, my tax lady, I go to the same lady every year. And every time I see her, she's like, I wait all year to figure out what it is you're doing now and, what ventures you've got under your sleeve because obviously, we have to make a living in this life. And I make it, but it's just like every single year I'm doing something completely different from the year before. And she's just so excited because I have that same passion to everything I do. I'm like, I want to do something different this year. And I have a passion towards it and behind it. And the passion never fizzles out. I just get onto something bigger and better with new ideas. And so, yeah, you can writing is always a foundation that I'm on. Artist is always a foundation that I'm on. I am going into health and this health and wellness journey right now, but I kind of want to go in an entrepreneurial sense to where I'm like, how big can I let this go? Or can I own a couple of my own things here? And I'm expanding in certain areas and trying to take off limitations that I've set on myself that I didn't know were there. And so it's just, yeah, it's different every year. We'll know who I am later on in life, I guess.
Well, that's huge too, and that's super cool, going the entrepreneurial route, especially like you said, when you're interested in so many different things, and especially after all the years, you kind of take all these things you learn, you take your experience with talking with different people and learning about people, and you can kind of start to notice what it is that people actually want, and
Right.
kind of in your desire to help people and in your understanding of what it is that they actually want and what they need, it kind of gives you that opening for actually being able to provide a service. And honestly, that's what I hope it still is. It might not be, but that is what was at the heart of America, is that entrepreneurial spirit and that freedom of being able to take what it is and what you love, and share that with other people in order to better their lives.
Hmm. I was wondering if, as you were saying that, lately I've noticed, and because I've gotten so much life experience. I like to joke around. I've had more life experience in just a few short years, even it feels like the last 10 years than most people have had in their lifetime. And so what I've noticed is when I do approach things in life, I think as we get a little bit older, and more experience under our belt with just life itself, with tragedies, with love, with heartache, and with prosperity, you come a lot more humbled. And that's philosophical as well. There's
Mhm.
millions of philosophies on that, but you come to a party or you come to a situation with so much more peace and quiet. And I started realizing in the last few conversations I've had over the years, my demeanor has changed in how I approach conversation. My demeanor has changed in how I even represent myself. And there's less of me now and more observation than ever before. And um, I'm curious if you've had just even people come up to you and talk, and you just kind of watch and observe, and they actually listen now to what you have to say because out of nowhere you can pull an experience or experiences from your belt and just mention in passing certain things, and they're kind of stunned or dumbfounded because you know far more on a topic than you'll ever lead anyone to believe. And it's like, so when you have all this knowledge, it's like, is podcasting the next thing to do? Is talking about it the next thing to do? Because we have another generation coming up and they're so starved for knowledge and they're so starved for quality time. Because if you look at the trends right now, a quick fix is all they're really mentally getting 24/7. They don't sit and have the deeper conversations. And I think that's what sets our, I guess, maybe our generation apart from the one coming up.
Absolutely. And like, I'm not even exaggerating this. I would say almost word for word, everything you just said is what I'm directly experiencing in my life right now, which I think is super cool. And I think that, me and you are kind of into some of the more abstract ideas and kind of these notions of kind of like collective consciousness and like, energy and types of
Mhm.
things like that. And I think that's kind of what's cool when you talk to people online from all over the world who are into similar things as you, is it's like you start to kind of notice these patterns of like people being led in similar directions and kind of like getting in tune with certain things. And I think what you were talking about with being humble and kind of taking a step back. And for me, when I speak to people, like you said, when they're kind of dumbfounded, or when they really take a moment to listen to what I have to say, I think it's because, and this is what I really appreciated about Jordan Peterson, is I think I've really learned how to refine things so much better, because I think
Mhm.
that's kind of what it is. It's like there's a million directions you can go in life. There's a million different things you can be doing or looking at. Um, but when you start to kind of notice patterns of what's actually meaningful, what's actually beneficial, it's like you can simplify things so much more. And when you're
Right.
talking to people and you're kind of articulating it that way, um, if they're willing to listen, and that's very important to you. If they're not willing to listen, it's kind of just going to go right over their head. But if they're willing to listen to you, they can kind of notice that. They can kind of be like, wow, that just put so much of my life into perspective within about 30 seconds of you
Mhm.
talking. And I think that's what makes it worth it. And it's like when I'm talking with most people, it's like I don't have to constantly be saying new things. I can just kind of share, like you said, that peace within myself. And they might not understand it completely, but it's very attractive to them for sure.
I think you can realize too who when it falls on deaf ears, or you kinda have to watch another person's demeanor, and you can kinda see where they're at in their journey. Because I think that's the most fascinating thing is watching where people are and seeing where people are, and then you can always take into consideration their age, you can take into consideration the type of person that they are, or personality that they are, and I think what I find absolutely fascinating is, right now, with the temperament of the world and what it's going through currently, it is so rare to find someone who is less hostile to an opposing view. And so I think there's few of us scattered about who are able to take out emotion and come to a logical conclusion, but also knowing leaving the emotion out of it is the only way that we're going to be able to push forward. And so when you're ready to see someone who's coming to the awakening process, I think it speaks volumes of where they're at based on their reaction to any opposition or any thought process that you're having. And you could see it in their body language, you could see it in their eyes, you could see it in their smile, you can see it in their demeanor head on. And even if it's just online, it's what what you can just tell a lot by someone's journey based on the anger and the energy they put forth. And so when you're actually having these types of conversations, and the art of conversation, like this is labeled, it's body language will tell you so much more than any words can. And I think as a writer, I thought words were so far more important than anything. And then what I'm finding is, as of now, I think body language and demeanor and energy and what people give off are just far superior to words. And then when you were talking about how you can simplify it like Jordan Peterson does, I don't can't remember who said it. Again, a philosopher is, if you can't come to a point in, one sentence, then you yourself are not even knowledgeable on your point. So once you have all this
Hmm.
knowledge and you have all these thoughts and you can't simplify it, then you're not there yet. And so that's one of my favorite things. I think Winston Churchill even said, if you have a good point, make it short and sweet and then pile drive it home and then come back and pile drive it home again. I love
Yep.
that. Like
Yep.
that's how it should be and that's how simple it should be, but we have gone so far off the deep end lately with so many topics. And I find every single time we go back to, why are we refining the wheel? The wheel works. There's no new wheel. So,
I think what happens too is people kind of get caught up in this rat race when they're trying to communicate. Like, I think if they feel like people aren't listening to them, and it happens in many different aspects of life, but I feel like if they feel like people aren't listening to them or they feel insecure in their conversation abilities, it can either kind of go to one of two extremes. Either they shut down and they just stop speaking, or they kind of overcompensate and just keep talking and talking and talking, and they even kind of realize they're just kind of like just running around, running at the mouth, like not really saying anything, but they just keep talking because they feel uncomfortable with that natural
mhm.
dynamic of conversation, and the fact that
Well,
sometimes there will be bits of silence in between it, because I think they feel like if there's silence in moments of the conversation, then like the other person's gonna actually have time to think about the empty words
well, let me
that
pause
they've
you
been saying.
there. Do
Sure.
you think that is an issue with the person speaking, or is it their audience, or both?
I think most of the time it's both in a
Okay.
conversation. It can depend though. I mean, well, because so for instance, so if I'm talking to someone who's either of those two extremes, someone who's very quiet and not saying much, or someone who's saying too much, if I feel like I have a healthy perspective on the conversation, I'm probably going to try to get them back on track. Otherwise, I'm going to understand the conversation isn't really going anywhere, and I'm just probably not going to talk to them much longer, honestly. I mean, unless they like came to me for help, I think that's a little bit different. But if
Mhm.
it's, say I'm at a bar or at a party or something and I'm just striking up a conversation with someone, if that's their approach to everything, it I feel like it's not really a conversation at that point because it's too much about them and not the flow back
Right.
and forth between things.
Yeah, I find I get excited. If I'm saying something and I feel like I have knowledge on that subject and someone's not receiving it or someone is not engaging with me, I tend to stop and I almost get excited and giddy, like, wait, you've got something for me. And it's like, no, 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 no. Have another shot if it's at a bar or talk to me. We're diving and we're going. I get really excited because they must have an opposing view, or they think I am just batshit crazy, which I'll take too. No issues there. But I really want to know what they're thinking at that point in time. Tell me I'm crazy. Tell me I'm wrong. Find my opposition. I want to learn. I want to know more about this. Why are you quiet? And that's where I go right away.
I know what you mean though, so that's a great point because I'm actually the same way, and but that's the body language thing too. So I think that that's a big thing because that's part of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, when you're talking about something passionate and they're quiet, normally they'll start averting their eyes a little bit, and I think that that's a big
Mm-hmm.
part of the communication is body language and what they're doing with their eyes, where their focus is. If they're starting to look away or kind of like do that wincing thing with their mouth, like like
Mm-hmm.
show kind of some signs of like it's making me uncomfortable a little bit, then yeah, I totally agree. I think it's worth being like, okay, well, what did I say? Like asking questions.
Right.
Did something I say do something and digging in a little bit? When I was kind of talking before about people shutting down, I think it's and partially too is like I'm pretty introverted, so I tend to meet people who are kind of naturally attracted to me who are pretty like shy and introverted themselves.
Mhm.
And I've just met, a few people who are just a little too far on the extreme of just like never talking, kind of no matter
Right.
what I say or what I ask.
Mhm.
Or some people who just kind of talk so much that they're never really listening to the other person.
Right.
So I definitely think that there's a huge kind of spectrum within the middle of those two. That still works perfectly fine within the conversation dynamic. But yeah.
Yeah. I've heard well, yesterday it was funny, I was at Starbucks, I was on my laptop and it was so crowded, couldn't get any work done, so then I went out on the patio, and it was a beautiful day yesterday, and there was such a dynamic going on, and I just remember there was a young girl who was interviewing for a job at Starbucks, and then across from me were 2 women who were visibly 70 to 75, maybe I wouldn't say 80, but, either low 70s, late 60s, mid 70s, and they were just the dynamic was so different, and I was watching the young girl, I couldn't have been more than 17, 18, trying to get a job, and this girl was beyond nervous, and so I could feel her energy, and I was watching her, and she couldn't make eye contact. You could tell she was probably, like you could tell she's introverted. She went off topic a lot, and it was about her own insecurities, and every time she would speak about her insecurities, she just kept talking, and I'm like, as an adult watching this, I'm like, "Oh, sweetheart, it's okay." Like, who I wanted to pull her aside, like, "Deep breath. Okay, you're only gonna answer these couple of questions, make eye contact, sit up straight." And I'm like, and that's just me being me, but I couldn't say anything, so I was just kinda cringing as watching her. I'm like, "This poor girl is struggling. I hope she gets it so she can, work on her, interpersonal skills, what have you." So I was watching that, and then I couldn't help but notice the 2 women, elderly women across from me. Not one thing in the 27 minutes I was there, not one word was about life, positivity, love, anything productive about any form of life whatsoever. And after sitting there hearing them complain about their husbands, complain about their grandkids, complain about their living community, complain about their dog, complain about how someone parked on a little bit on the line, and anyone that walked by, why was she wearing that? She's too fat. And I was just like, I felt so bombarded and just listening. And I'm like, so naturally, in my own state, I take that with me the whole day and I'm thinking about it the whole day. And like, what can I learn from that? I hope I don't sound that way. And then I was thinking about the poor girl who was struggling during her, interview. And I was thinking of her parents. And it's like, okay, as a parent, am I that way? Like, can my kids come to me? And I'm wondering about their home life and their home dynamic. And it's like, is there anything I can take away from both of these experiences, something that I can learn? And is there something that I could hopefully tell someone about words and body language and all? And these women were closed off. They ended up taking some guy's seat. The poor guy just walked away. And I was just like,
Mm.
I was just watching, listening yesterday. It was one of my introverted days. I had very, very little human contact yesterday because it was one of my days I had to get a lot of work done. So I was just thinking about it all day. And that's on conversation right there. If one woman decided to change the dynamic or change, I know the other would have followed because they were just feeding off one another. It reminded me of Ghostbusters, like the old one, I think number 2, that green
Hmm.
goo that would just keep growing in the Underground Railroad anytime
Yep.
people were angry with each other.
Yep.
I kept visualizing that. I'm like, anytime a negative thing came out of the mouth, I felt like goo just like rising and rising. And it's like, all it takes is, hey, just start speaking some love to her. And she was talking about something having surgery, and they're like, oh, that's terrible. And this, and everything was like, well, no, let's stop and, have good thoughts about him, or even pray. Let's pray for him, or nothing. And then I'm seeing the girl over there just bombing this thing, and I felt her insecurities, and I'm just like, my goodness, maybe we have something to tell the world, even if one person hears it. That's mine.
Well, and it's words are so powerful, and the reason I wanted to choose this conversation to, kind of start things off is because people I feel like aren't they don't remember that, or they've just lost sight of that so much. When we have I'm sure you experience the same thing as me, how easy it is to completely change someone's maybe not their mind, but just how they're talking, their energy,
Yes.
just by a quick question or just showing them some love. And
Mhm.
I think the most important, showing them that they're seen. When
Yes.
someone's angry, when someone's yelling at stuff, when someone's I I live in Arizona. If someone's being racist, which I mean, I've worked in a lot of restaurants, I've worked in a lot of
Mhm.
type of those situations where it's kind of casual. And I mean, I don't throw racism around lightly. I'm not super. I don't get super offended about stuff, but I mean, kind of genuine animosity. I I don't judge them. I just ask, "What are you doing?" If
Yes.
if they're saying something about like a coworker of theirs who's a different race saying something, I'm like,
Hey, hey,
why?
hey.
I'm like,
Mhm.
why? Well, then, and not even that necessarily. I'm like, why are you saying that to me, man? Like, you were just laughing with this guy 2 minutes ago. And you seem like genuine. You seem like you were genuinely having a good time. Why would you say that? And he's like, oh, I mean, no, I'm just like saying that kind of in general. And I'm like,
Mm.
yeah, I know. But even in general, like he's a cool dude. Like, why would you say that about him? And I genuinely see them stop,
And
reflect,
think.
and they're like, yeah, yeah, I'm sorry, dude. Like, and I'm like, don't tell me, go tell him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I know he overheard you. Like, you're not quiet about this. You're like being the loudmouth and saying it. I'm like, go tell him. And I
Mhm.
genuinely said this. Like, this is an example, and he did it. And it took about 20 seconds. I didn't shame him. I put the spotlight on him for a second and said, "Hey, dude, you're not invisible. I see you right now. This is what you're saying. Like, you got to check yourself." And I feel like a lot of people are just caught up in these loops of conversation where they're stuck in these ideologies that are kind of overpowering them. They're very out of touch with themselves. They don't understand their thought processes and like what they value, and so they kind of get caught up in these conversational loops where people are just yelling, and they're trying to get a point across because it thinks it gives their side of things more power. So they're kind of speaking in a way that is just trying to gain power from their kind of team philosophy, as opposed to
Right.
just viewing things as, here I am, here's me, one person, having a conversation with you, another person.
Right. Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's who they are inside. And so
Hmm.
I don't know if you have a friend like this. I have maybe 1 or 2 people that I've known since I was maybe, early teens, couple of friends, and they're off in different parts of the world, different life, completely different track, what have you, and every now and then you get that phone call, and it's like we reconnect, and it's interesting because you know one person one way, and then you talk to them a couple years later, and you can tell where they've been or what's changed about them, even just their demeanor and their voice, and they can go one way or they can go the other. And I got a call from a friend about a month or 2 ago, and I could tell, he has gone a really good way, him and his wife, and, we catch up every now and then, and you can see the difference, um, in their life's journey based on the words that they're saying, and a person who didn't speak life or didn't speak love is speaking love, and comes down to the gentleness and the calmness. And I think that's what, to circle back to where we were talking in the very beginning of people who don't have such animosity or energy towards the words that they spew out, and how their language is different and how their words are completely different, and their delivery, you can just tell, is a 180 from what it once was. You can tell where they're at in their journey of self-reflection and self-healing, and it's refreshing. And then you can talk to someone, years later, and they're going the other way, and you can hear the more anger, or you can hear, cynicism, and you can hear all the, and it's just like, man, what are you doing? And you can get stuck there. I don't know if you've ever had any experience with, I used to take care of a grandma for 5 years, last 5 years of her life. Every morning I'd go give her medicine at her retirement home. And every night I'd put her to bed at her retirement home. And so I got to know a lot of people there. Walk in, talk to my few regulars who are by the door, in their little wheelchair. And some of those people
Yeah.
are holding on to anger from when they were 10, and the animosity, and they're grumpy and they're angry, and they have, and you can just see they give up and they just have this hatred. And I didn't think that happened because I had the opposite, in my grandma. And it's interesting, the past that we take and the animosity that we hold, and what you did with that coworker hopefully was one of those little nuggets along the way that just holds up a tiny little mirror and just says, "Hey, where are you going? Where are you headed? Why are you thinking this way? Who are you to where that word would come out of your mouth?" You know? It's interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and kind of the reason I brought up that like larger this kind of like, I don't know if I'd call it a theory, but just I don't know, just kind of how I think of it is when people get caught up in these things, or if you want to call it sin, if you want to call it whatever it is, something that is a disservice to their mental and spiritual well-being. I feel like it's them losing themselves, that individual that God created them to be, and them starting to act in service not to God but into some sort of false God, whether that's an ideology or um, some sort of vice, something like that. They start to lose um, that
I
integrity.
They're ushered. I feel like
Yeah.
society is ushering you into
Hmm.
one way right now, and you have to fight tooth and nail to go the other direction. The way that
Hmm.
the algorithms are set up, the way social media is set up, the way the media is set up, we are ushered into a one way of thinking, and we are to shit on anyone else who thinks otherwise. And that's where you
Yeah.
kind of see the few people who are straggling away from that. They're losing friends, they're losing family, and it's not even going in another direction because we have a two-party system. I'll use that for an example. We have a
Hmm.
two-party system. The one is, heavily influenced, and the other one is opposing. And then how about the other people who decide to go completely away from all of it? I'm going to categorize myself in that group. Um, you're almost a lone ranger out there, and you try to get as many people as you can to like kind of see like, hey, don't we see something wrong with this? Don't we feel something's wrong with this? And so you see so many people ushered in a certain way, and so you are a breath of fresh air when you come at them, and you're just mindful, you're quiet, you receive what they're saying, and you listen to them because they're used to just almost a barking or an ushering. And the second or third thought that they wouldn't think because they haven't been told to think that way, or it's not popular to think that way, is coming from someone who actually recognizes the human interaction as something that's so beyond even just human. It's a soul interaction, just even having conversations and looking someone in the eye and watching their body language and then actually feeling what they're going through and understanding them. So sorry to interrupt. I just, a lot of the
No.
times when you're having
Yeah.
conversations with these people, you're realizing you're not even having a conversation with any thought that they've had on their own.
Yes. Yes. It's, and if I was to imagine two people who are like that having a conversation with each other, essentially there was never a conversation that
Right.
that was had. It's ideology talking to ideology, and like no conversation at all. It's either two people who agree reinforcing each other, or two
Mhm.
people who like borderline hate each other just screaming at each other,
Right.
but there's no conversation happening there.
Right.
It's like, yeah. um But let's see. So what else? No, but it's interesting, kind of what you were saying about being ushered certain ways, and something that's been huge for me over, I'd say, the last year, in really taking a step back and just trying to focus on artistic things, on spiritual things, on beauty in this world is trying to be humble and to see, how am I being ushered? What am I being ushered into? Is it is it truth? Is it like honestly true? And for me, who has a certain proclivity towards conspiracy theories, I think that it can start to get a little too abstract and a little bit too far beyond things that I can know or actually like incorporate into my life.
Mhm.
And I started kind of seeing certain conspiracies that just weren't true. Now, there's a lot that are true, but there are also a lot of people who run with that, who kind of jump into that frame and say,
And they get
oh, well, if
lost.
this is, and their own perspective, they're trying to say how they see things as if it's like actually true.
Right.
And so I started noticing myself, I'd start getting caught up in that a little bit more than I'd like to be. And I was
Mhm.
like, okay, John, how are you actually like incorporating this into your life? You have all these ideas, you have all this knowledge. How is this like manifesting in your life? You're
Yes.
either on your phone, on your computer. You're not balanced. You have too much ideas, you have too much thought, not enough like embodiment. And you need both. They're both so important. God didn't make us as these disembodied minds just floating off into space. He put us in bodies. He told us to go out into the world, talk to people, work hard, suffer. Like all of that is valuable to who you are and to your life. And I feel like that is part of what's missing in the conversation is that embodiment of all these things. Everyone kind of has their theory of what's true, their theory of what's real, but they're not willing to take the risk and actually like put it into action. Because when you put it into action, that makes it visible and that opens it up for other people to judge it and say, oh, maybe that's not working as well.
Right.
And
What I at
and that
least
that that leads to humility because then you can either say, okay, well, maybe I have to refine my thoughts and actually kind of
right.
change what I think a little bit, or you can be too proud and say, no, like it's fine, other people are wrong.
Well, I know all of the above. I know all those people. I like to just watch the enlightenment, but what I have seen, especially lately, is some people I love and cherish, they go down certain rabbit holes, which is fine. And there's rabbit holes you already know I won't go down. I won't touch AI. AI scares the hell out of me.
Yep.
And then I see people confirming the AI fears that I have. There's a reason Terminator 2 is like my go-to. Like, so anyways, I go down those roads and I see I'm guilty of this. I'll go down and I'll be crippled. Like what's even the point? And then when you see it you start to isolate, you start to wonder. And then even in our interactions, you and I over the years, I noticed I'm saying something negative to you. You're saying something negative back because we're both going down the same rabbit hole and we have emotions about it. We're upset about this or that. And
Hmm.
I have to take a step back, and I'm kind of notorious for this. I will delete all social media out of nowhere, no warning. And I'm just like, hold on, I need to go. Because you start doing that, and then you're like, what the hell am I even here for? What's the point? If this is all going down, and then you're looking at it, wait, you have to come back to yourself. It's like, hold on, stop. Let me put this phone away. Let me shut off the news. I haven't watched the news in like 5 years. Let me shut my computer and my laptop. When's the last time I looked another person in the eyes and smiled? And like truly, when you look someone in the eyes, even if it's a stranger, and you just smile and then you see the reaction from them, and to you, it's another smile back, or you can almost do a deep sigh, like, okay, we're relational beings. We are not meant for what the current trajectory is, which is
Yes.
completely
Yep.
isolation, completely staying home in your box that you're not supposed to stay in. We're not supposed to live in boxes either, by the way. They're supposed to be circular. We can learn a few things from the indigenous. But anyways, I digress. When's the last time you touched nature? When's the last time you let the sun just fall on you and you got your nutrients from the sun or from the source of, the soil and the magnesium that like I can go on a tirade. Granted, it's all from the quote unquote conspiracy theories, but at the end of the day, it's what works and it's what's always worked. And as a human race, we every single time we stray away from nature and we stray away from what we're meant to be doing as human souls, we get so caught up and isolated and we go down this trajectory that completely depletes us of other people. And we start to lose our relationships, we start to lose our foundations, and we start to lose our meaning and our purpose. And we're all here with meaning and purpose. And we walk away from that the second that we start going towards things that are, again, what we're being ushered towards in this new world of technology, in this new world, depleted of nutrients in our food, all these things. And so
Yeah.
I was going somewhere with that. What I was saying was the conspiracy theory stuff, it fascinates me. And I've found so many to be completely ridiculous when I did my research. I'm like, this is stupid. Or I go down another one, I'm like, oh, that one seems to be legit. But then I ask
Hmm.
myself, okay, with all this knowledge, now what?
Yep.
I'm disconnecting myself from people. If someone wants to inquire about something, I'll be more than happy to tell them. Maybe we can talk about it, what have you. And then hopefully it leads them to a path of enlightenment, because I think at the end of the day, that's all we're supposed to be doing for one another, because we're all on our own journey. Our paths may cross, our journeys may cross, but at the end of the day, what your life is your own and what you make of it. And I think we're all here with a specific roadmap and destination, and we're going to cross paths. And I think we're going to stunt ourselves if we get so far into the matrix and what the matrix is doing, we lose sight of the actual gift that is being a human being and having a soul.
Yeah. Well, there was a YouTuber I watched the other day, and she said something that just like really touched my heart. I thought it was really well said. She was talking about how she's always kind of been like girly girl, like wears dresses, loves makeup, loves all these things, and she said she started feeling like shame kind of over the years for being that way. I don't know if that's a more modern thing that kind of knocks that type of behavior or femininity or something, but she just said she started feeling like a lot of shame towards being that way. But as she grew her relationship with God, she just started to realize like, no, God made me this way, and in making me this way, as He does with everyone, He's saying that I'm sharing part of who I am with the world through how I created you.
Right.
And I thought that that was just such like a beautiful and true thing to say. It's like the different the differentness of all of us is meant to be shared through communication, and it's an element of God if we serve him, um, that's shared with the world through how we live our life. And it's the complete opposite of that for everyone to try to just be equal or try to mimic each other and to just do the same thing.
Right.
And you can tell because it's like when they try to do that, you can just see the fear and the emptiness and the loneliness. Like once the camera's off and you see them in real life, like it's just um, it's not there. There's not the flow.
Hmm.
Like to me, flow, energy, and rhythm is so important to this conversation because that is so lacking in
Hmm.
this world. And I actually, I probably notice it the most at like concerts, music shows.
Mm.
You go back and look at the 90, I mean, from the 90s onward back, people at concerts, at shows, the music's going, everyone's vibing, moving in rhythm with each other to the music. You look at stuff nowadays and it's just people, even if it's like a heavy metal or rock thing, they're just standing there looking at the stage. Like
Yeah.
people aren't even moving. They're just standing there. And
Yeah.
it's very ominous.
Yeah. And a lot of that has to do with environment, and a lot of that has to do with, I mean, we can go down a conspiracy theory on that road, but we are not in a, we are not vibrating at a frequency that is anything normal.
Yeah.
That's science too. If you want to go down that road, that is all science. We are not in touch with what we need to be in touch with. Starting with, we're supposed to be waking up with the sun. The sun should be on us in the first 20 minutes of us waking. But we have these roofs, and we like, I can go on all day. But I did want to circle back to something you did say. You mentioned, the journey is part of suffering, and that's a very telling thing. And I think a lot of masculinity, you find your source and connection to your source through suffering, and I think that's a
Hmm.
masculine thing, and I think that's wonderful. Other side is the feminine side of things. And so I've been in touch with both sides. I've had to, I still am with some of my roles and jobs, and I'm going through a firefighter academy, working with firefighters, daily. That's a very masculine energy, but it's rewarding. But at the same time, I find that I'm losing my feminine side as well, and I don't want to ever lose touch with that, because that side, I'm here as a woman. That's the
Hmm.
best side of me. When I'm so freely in my feminine energy, and my mind goes to love and nurturing and caring, and how can it's when I see what the woman is capable of, as far as turning something mundane as four walls into a sanctuary for her family, and love and the compassion and the heart for others, and for making her world, even if it's just this small little, I have a small little piece here in California, but I want to make this world so beautiful in my own little boat here. It's inviting towards others, it's endearing towards others, it's filled with forgiveness, it's filled with compassion, and it's filled with empathy. And where in the world can anyone else get that right now? If I were to go outside of my little bubble here, or go outside of who I am, where would I find this elsewhere? And I can't think of someone I can go to right now who would completely enrapture me in love, other than, a divine heavenly father. Or
Hmm.
no, I can't even think of a friend or a girlfriend that would cater to the needs that, I might need in that feminine energy, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and I was honestly hoping we would kind of get into this topic a little bit because it's another thing that's such a huge part of the conversation right now, masculinity and femininity. And it's they're almost starting to kind of turn into caricatures at this
Mhm.
point in like the public conversation because people are just so detached from any sort of
Well, they're
deep.
fighting with one another. I don't know why.
Well, they're fighting with one another,
And
but
fighting within themselves.
I, because I think that it's it's too natural. I think it does need to be natural. That's half of it, but the other half has to be spiritual too.
Hmm.
Like I really feel that. I know, and it might have been a long time ago, so I'm not sure if you still do follow him. Elliot Hulse, do you remember him at all?
Vaguely. Vaguely.
Um, but he talked about something. He's very very interesting dude because like when you listen to him, he just kind of seems like typical gym bro type energy, but he's like also like one of the most like profound philosophy type students, like so well read, so well articulated.
Hmm.
And just hearing him talk about the dynamic between masculinity and femininity was so interesting to me because he kind of related it to like paternity, patriarch, to pattern. So like the kind of masculine pattern, kind of, like the man shares his seed, he shares a pattern, he kind of embodies this type of paternal teaching wisdom cycle type thing, very interested in ideas and sharing that. And then on the feminine side of maternal matriarch, matter, very in touch with nature and, providing that environment
Hmm.
and stuff like that. So I thought that that was a really cool way to kind of like frame things a little bit. And I think what's important about the relationship between the two is that is the fact that they appreciate each other but also acknowledge the differences between them, because I think when they're trying to be everything themselves, it's just a way of the world saying to each other, whether they're explicitly or implicitly saying it's kind of a way just of people just these days saying I don't need you. And like that's just so sad to me.
Well, then it comes
And
from a
it's
place
not
of
even
pain.
true.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
it also can come from a wound, and it can come from a place of
Oh yeah.
pain. It can come from a myriad of things. And this is where you have to go to individuals. So there's reasons why people like whom you mentioned, and I think the most recent person canceled was Andrew Tate. And I listened to some of his
Hmm.
stuff, and it was hard to listen to as a woman. It was hard to listen to, But sometimes I think men identified with him because of his brashness and his straightforwardness. And I heard some stuff I did not agree with. I'm just going to be honest. But
Oh,
then I saw some
yep.
other things that I was like, okay, kind of makes sense. But women were hearing it and wanted him canceled. And I'm like, no, I wouldn't cancel him. That's because, again, I don't want to cancel anybody. He has a thought that's valid for someone, and someone needs to have their own journey with that. But on the other hand, I was thinking of, okay, well, women need to have a source that they're going to. And I think at the end of the day, if anyone were to get upset, it's because of our own wounds and how we've been treated. And it's because, and we're all going to hate this answer, we haven't gone back and held accountability for our actions. So if a man wounds me, okay, I could do everything right. And I have been wounded very badly. I did everything
Mhm.
I thought was correct. I did everything I thought was right. There was a man who was wounded in his masculinity and didn't have a proper teacher. He didn't look inside of himself. And that came, and I had to pay the price for it. So now that I paid the price for it, what do I learn from it? Do I get angry? Do I say I'm never doing this again? Do I talk in my anger? Do I talk in my wounds, or do I go inside and go and heal them and take the time it takes to heal them? Because at the end of the day, I start to lose who I am. And who I am as a feminine woman. And when I start to see things and say things and think a certain way, like I remember thinking, I'm never doing this again. I cannot do this. I don't have another relationship in me. Why does this keep happening? It's let's look at patterns. Let's look at the partners. Let's look at where I'm going and why I'm feeling this way and why this person is just a reflection of who I chose at that time and who chose me. And what did I have to learn from that? What journey was I on to where this is what I attracted and this is what I kept up with? And so at the
Mm.
end of the day, we can have all these people who have all these thoughts on these things, but until you go inside, inward to your foundation and do the spiritual work, anything that you're putting out in your feminine energy or your masculine energy, or, as a woman or as a man, you have to answer to yourself and you have to answer to the woman that's looking in the mirror or the man that's looking in the mirror. And I think a lot of that gets answered when we start to have children and we start to see, you know, you can almost look at how would I want someone to treat my daughter? I don't want this for them. You start looking at yourself. Kids hold up a mirror to us.
Mhm.
How do I want them to perceive this world? How do I want them to be strong enough to handle, the heartbreak that's going to come? And you kind of have to prepare them, but you also make sure that their picker, who they choose to have in this life is someone who's aligned with them. So at the end of the day, we can have all this hoorah rah about, he wasn't acting in his masculine energy and who cares? You go inside of you and figure out where that is for you, and you set your standard for yourself and you hold accountability for yourself. And if you're in the wrong, you own it, and we all grow from there. And that's, obviously in a perfect world, but it's been a very interesting topic because I'm seeing it from both sides and I'm seeing such an uproar and anger towards one another, both sexes. It's been interesting to watch, to say the least.
Yeah. Um, it real quick. So I do have a response to some of that, but real quick before I forget to ask something I've been curious for a while, and I would really respect and be interested to hear your opinion on this. As far as femininity with women nowadays, do you think that there's a specific aspect of it or a certain misunderstanding about femininity that is kind of um, like attached to kind of, I don't know if I'd say shame, but like attached to the reason why a lot of women are trying to act more like men nowadays?
Well, it depends on, a lot of people think a woman wanting to work is acting like a man. I'm going to disagree with that, but I want to see where I take it a little bit further. You'd have to be more specific because I've both been a stay-at-home wife and mom. I've also been working like right now nonstop. And let me tell you, I best served my household and myself and God when I had that time to cultivate um, a nurturing home. And that's me. Were
Hmm.
there times when I felt like I contributed nothing? Yes. I felt like it was a thankless job. And that could have been my now ex husband. It could have been him. And I didn't get much gratitude. I didn't, for all the efforts I put in, it felt fruitless. It wasn't fruitless, but at the time, I did everything I made lunches, notes, breakfast, lunch, and dinner dishes, everything you can think of. I did my traditional, quote unquote, traditional role. And let me tell you, for my household, that served better than me working, coming home tired, barely making it, to putting my dreams and aspirations on hold of wanting to write, wanting to be my artistic, embodiment. Um, Certainly wasn't helping anyone else, So
Hmm.
there, it depends on what you think being a woman trying to be a man looks like.
Well, then I'm glad you clarified that because I do completely agree with you that, wanting to work or what you just described, um, that wasn't necessarily what I meant with the part of wanting to be a man.
Okay.
But no, that was a good clarification. So
So
I think
clarify what you
more so what I meant, and I don't think it even has to do with a woman wanting to be like a man necessarily, because part of it is me kind of trying to figure out how to word this or conceptualize this as well. But I think it's more so just um, kind of the competitive nature of everything. And it might also be a cultural thing too within our country. But I feel like just kind of the landscape and the nature of just the work environment and communication and everything, it feels like men and women are competing against each other as opposed to forming healthy relationship dynamics with each other. I feel like even within the bounds of relationships, obviously not with all relationships, but more so as a trend that I see keeps continuing along this line, it seems to just kind of be a like a competitive landscape. And I suppose in my brain that just kind of correlated to kind of more of a masculine dominance type energy. So I
yeah.
think that's kind of more of what I was trying to think of. Like, do you see things that way, or do you think
So
I'm
I'll be completely
misinterpreting?
honest here. And this is what I have noticed because I've been in the
Hmm.
workforce for many years now. And I'm moving up ladders, literally, figuratively. And I have noticed, I did call someone out on this. And I just have to say this one little story, and I hope it relates to what you're saying. I think what you're trying to say.
Okay.
There was this woman who was a superior to me and a couple coworkers, and she came in and she just basically said, "Hey, you guys aren't getting this done. I need this done." And she was very firm. She didn't come off with a, and she's a woman. She didn't come off soft. She just came off very matter of fact and very logical. Now, me, I love that. Absolutely. I don't need fluff. Love that. And I kind of was like impressed because she came in like a boss, handled her stuff. The 2 males that I worked with were like, "God, she's a bitch, da 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 da." And I looked at him, I'm like, "Wait, I have respect for this woman. What do you mean?" I'm like, "No, no, because there's me. I'm genuinely curious. I need to hear this perspective." And they know me. These guys know me. They love me. I've worked with them for years, and they respect my opinion. And I'm just like, stop. I need you to guys to stop that for a minute." Because not 20 minutes prior did a male come in, and I won't say his name because it rhymes with yours. I'm just kidding. He came in and he did the exact same thing, different words, but did the exact same thing, and it was received so well by these 2 guys. And so I stopped him. I'm like, "Hey, so and so just came and said this, and you guys were fine with it." I said, "Be honest with me. If the person who just came in and gave you all that, if she wasn't a woman, would you call her a bitch and have issues with it?" And they both kind of chuckled and they're thinking about, they're like, "Actually, no, if that was a man, I'd respect her." And they both agreed, and my mouth dropped to the floor, and I'm like, I don't wanna think that the stereotype is real, but it seems to be. It appears to be, because this woman had to step into her masculine and tell these men what to do. They did not receive it because she is supposed to be her feminine self. You know what I'm saying? And so there is a competition. So if a woman has to go to work and she has to be put in these positions, and I've been called that before, when all I'm doing is my job in a management position, I have to come in, find the faults, fix them, put plans in place. I think women do have to work a little harder to build rapport and get people on their good side. But even still, because of the stigma that's there, or because maybe I'm not at home barefoot and cooking, maybe that's it too. I don't know. But I try to come at it with a completely clear head and a completely clear mind. And I'm going to tell you right now, there are times I've had to do that and I have no problem doing it, but I know it's not received because it's me, if that makes sense.
It does make sense for sure. And I think in that environment, um, it is necessary to be acting that way. And kind of my question too, where I was leading to, and wanting your perspective on thing, because I don't think that it's just something that has to do with the feminine.
Mhm.
I just wanted to kind of hear your side, because I think a lot of the problems with where things went wrong on, the guy's side of things has been going on for like, I mean, who knows how long, but I'd say, 100 something years since kind of World War I. I feel like been, that's kind of when this this pull apart from the dynamic between relationships kind of started. So
Mhm.
what I kind of meant with my curiosity wasn't necessarily in the work environment per se, but more so, um, like kind of, so let's say, yeah, you go to work and you have to kind of act that way to be competitive, to kind of be in that competitive landscape for the job. But then let's say you're in a relationship and you come
Right.
home, and how does that line up as far as kind of switching back? Is that easy? Is that beneficial? Do you kind of get like my area of interest in terms of like the difference between going out into that competitive landscape and then going home, and
It's hard to
even
shut off.
whether, yeah, even whether or not people want to switch off, they might not want to
Mhm.
to go back into, that feminine environment mode. And um, also, when I talk about these things, I'm not really saying that um, like it's easy or necessarily a choice, because I mean, my grandmother, when my grandfather um, went off and got remarried, she had 4 kids and she was working 2 jobs. She was doing everything that she could to provide for her children. It's
Yeah.
like people live very difficult lives. So
Yes.
when people are trying to make sense of these things, I'm very compassionate and very open to listening to people's perspective on everything. Um, but as things get more complicated, um, it it can kind of start to spiral out of control if people don't kind of take a step back and think about like how things are progressing, or um, the relationship between everything. So
In
kind
a
of also like on the guy's sense, it's like I feel like part of what's led to the problem is, and like I said, like with my grandma's time, like 50 years ago, for all the guys that are like, there's kind of just a growing trend of guys really not wanting to date or get married because they're going online, they're not getting real
Mhm.
world experience, and they're hearing horror stories of
Yes.
divorces and of women taking guys for everything that they have.
Yes.
And they're real horror stories, but is it really the majority of cases, or is it really as prevalent as they're hearing from it? I've done my research. No, it's not. There are still plenty of circumstances, but there are also circumstances of guys completely screwing over a woman's life. If you have an insecurity and if you're afraid of something happening, you can go online and get an endless stream of reinforcement
And
that,
gratification.
yes. Hmm.
And it'd be quick. And so to that, I have been through it. And to anyone listening who doesn't know, I was married, and if I look back on it, I loved being married. I was in a very feminine role. He was the provider. The way that marriage ended was so absolutely catastrophic and on such a completely different level than I could have ever anticipated. And looking at it, I will own my parts in it, but my goodness, there was some major screw ups on his. You know what I'm saying? And
Hmm.
so at the end of the day, it's like I hate divorce. I still hate divorce, and divorce is going to be felt for not just this generation but the next one. Like the generational stuff that divorce does and the havoc that it wreaks on families and kids and then eventually grandkids, like astronomical. And so with that being said, for years I said I will never get married again. And I'm sure my ex is saying the same thing. After going inside myself, going inside soul, going and connecting to God and going back to nature and healing, I would
Hmm.
get that was such an amazing experience. I am willing to do that again, but for good. And I will do that again. And I lost a lot. He lost a lot. Our families, both sides have struggled. And it's a ripple effect. It just isn't just you. It's all parties involved, all parties' families involved. It's terrible. Hear me. Divorce is awful. If you can fight for it, fight for it. Ours was beyond repair, unfortunately. So, with that being said, I 100% would do it all over again. And if you asked me that 3 years ago, it'd be a completely different answer. But going back, there was something so beautiful in having a partner. There's something so beautiful in having a safe space to land on. Um, I am an introvert. I'm an extrovert. I'm an introverted extrovert, if that makes sense. Some people will align
Oh
with
yeah,
that.
totally.
I can
Yep.
work a room all day. I could be the center of attention, no problem. But I need to recharge alone. And I recharge alone. That makes you an introvert. I could do this life alone. I don't want to. And I choose not to. I'm okay alone. I travel alone. I can go out and eat alone. I can go do everything alone. I'm fine with that. And I'm good with myself to go do that. I choose not to. I would love to get married again. I'd love to have a partner for life. If that's feminine, sign me up all day. But if we're talking roles, I liked being taken care of. It felt nice to be taken care of. And in being taken care of, it was beautiful to take care of them right back. And
Yes.
that's where I felt needed. And I loved that someone could lean on me and I could it was a yin and yang. I could lean on them for different reasons. They can lean on me for different reasons. Where there were strengths in him, there were strengths in me. And we countered each other with our weaknesses and our strengths. And it was a beautiful bond. And I see why marriage is such a beautiful entity.
Absolutely. Well, and just from a guy's perspective too, I feel like um, people might underestimate just how important and meaningful it is for a guy to have that sort of like acceptance and warmth waiting for him after he's gone off and you know, like I said, been in that competitive landscape. If he's going out and doing real work and suffering and all that stuff to have a home and a wife and kids there, it's like
Well,
just totally exhausted. um
and knowing that there's peace at home though. I think that's a big part we're not
mhm,
saying.
yeah.
I think it takes a very strong woman, a feminine and strong woman to ensure that
Mhm.
her household has peace. Um, I know a lot of people who go home to chaos and disdain and discomfort. And I try to think of that as a man because I try to think both sides. I always do this. I'm not just going to go
Mhm.
for myself. I want to put myself in other people's shoes as well. I know some guys who work with their hands and they're working 10 blue collar guys. I couldn't imagine doing that all day long and physically being so damn down and tired and hungry and just to ensure that the house that he comes home to is paid for. And I couldn't imagine being nagged or being yelled at or saying
Right.
I'm not doing enough. And so my heart breaks because I see that and I've noticed that. And that's where marriages start to fall apart because there's going to be someone out there who might talk sweetly to him like his wife once did. And so he's going to venture off and then she's going to feel unloved and felt like maybe she doesn't get the thanks that she should probably get, which she deserves too. So it's like
Mhm.
you see these
Yeah.
little things start to creep up and then all of a sudden years later they're getting divorced and it's not for one reason, it's for 500 little reasons, all of which I just kind of summed up a little bit. And so both parties have to take an active role in what they're doing for one another and recognize their relationship and each other comes first. And if both parties are putting the other person first, there's no failing. There isn't. If I've got your best interest at heart and you've got my best interest at heart, what peace and duality can break that? Like that's perfect.
Yeah. And I think there's such a cool, interesting principle too, which is tied not just to Christianity, but I think to many other religions as well. And that that kind of eternal truth of sacrifice, and just it's kind of a paradox almost. It's like if you make certain sacrifices in life, you end up receiving what you think you sacrificed in even greater numbers than you would
Mhm.
have gotten if you would have just immediately tried to reap what you sowed. So
Right.
in that case, so let's say this guy kind of comes home after a long day, and his wife wants to talk about something that was stressing her out during the day. If she just waits a moment, says, "Hi, honey, how was your day?" gives him 30 minutes to kind of unload. She just spends time with him. They just kind of spend that time in peace together. He'll eventually start feeling more rejuvenated just by that peace and that calmness. And then he'll ask, "How was your day, honey?" And then she
There you
can kind
go.
of get into
Yeah.
that. And then you're going to have an actual intimate and meaningful conversation, as opposed to just the second he walks in the door. "Oh, here's all my problems, this. And then not only does he not hear you, but it just kind of turns into a fight.
Yeah. Well, an expectation too is
Yes.
we have an unrealistic expectation. I am guilty of this too. I could be online. I give myself 1 hour of social media at most a day because every now and then I just need to recharge. I read something great, and that's pretty much my news. And how I know of what's going on is social media. I won't actually watch the news, but I'll get snippets of what's going on. I'll do my research, and then what have you. I will come across the algorithm is after me. Is your man doing this? If he's not doing this, that's the bare minimum. How come he's not thinking? It's literally, and imagine if someone was on this all day, infiltrating my brain of all the things my partner is not doing. And it starts to get real self-righteousy. And then you can actually go down like, when is the last time he told me I was beautiful? When is the last time, he asked me how my day was? And things that are a non-issue makes you start thinking, start wondering, but it's like, I challenge anyone who's going through that cycle to ask themselves, when's the last time I made sure he knew how much he meant to me? And I try to take everything I see during the day and I try to apply it as needed, but I put it back on me. I always put everything back on me, and how am I at least doing what I can do, because there's absolutely nothing I can do to make my partner do something for me. He's got to want to do that. And I've got to make sure that who I am with is someone, that has those traits. But bring it back on yourself. So anyone listening to this who gets fault, because I think it's a real attack on women right now, of to feel disdain for what men are not doing, as opposed
Mm.
to being content with, you have a good relationship. Why are you letting this algorithm tell you you don't? Why are you letting other people influence you? Because it's just mindless and it's constant and it's all over social media. And I'm not quite sure why the algorithm changed so much in the last few years, but it is shit on your man day out there. And you'd have to hope that you're combating that with filling your brain with the good things. And men are wonderful people, so are women. You
Hmm.
have to literally just do the internal work yourself.
Well, and that's so interesting too, because on my side, it's the complete opposite. It's, and like you said, it's crazy how the algorithm works. It's all this stuff of, this is what, women are doing. This is what's going to happen if
Yeah,
you end up dating. This is why you should be like Andrew Tate and have 20 different people in a different country,
right,
and and all
right.
that stuff. Like, and and why that happens, why people make those videos and why those videos get tons of views, is because if you're not if you're not in that healthy relationship, or, well, then at this point the algorithm has gotten so crazy that, like, if you like one random video, all of a sudden it just starts like
Oh
spamming
yeah.
you with "are you miserable" stuff. So nowadays it's just crazy. But let's go back, say maybe like 2 or 3 years ago. If you're watching a lot of stuff, relationship advice and things like that, people are going to make videos, for people who aren't in that situation, or they're giving dating advice. And it's just, online it's a very different world from the integrated real world, because in the integrated real world, in a room of people, you're going to have the single people and you're going to have the married people. And the married people who have 3 kids, they don't have time
Right.
to be part of the conversation
Right.
online and all that stuff. But when they go out with friends, when they meet you at the bar, when they meet you at a party, they are going to have time and they're going to talk about what their life is like, and you're going to get that perspective. But online, um, everything just kind of falls, like you said, into that algorithm. And
Don't get wrong. There's the married, there's a very prevalent unhappy married women thing on there too. I somehow got in that
oof.
algorithm. It's not for me, but I somehow I'm in that algorithm. And it's, when he doesn't do this when he comes home, and I haven't had a chance to talk to a single human adult. I'm like, okay, I can align with that. And so it starts to get you, and I'm like,
Hmm.
okay, so there's not a single facet. And so it's funny we're even talking about this because I was on a walk last night with a friend. She came over, we're reconnecting, and unanimously, a couple of girlfriends and it's unanimous. It is more attractive when social media is just not involved for both parties. I think on both sides. Men don't want women with social
Yes.
media, and women do not want men with social media. And I'm like, okay, I see the culprit. And I think that's very telling. And then it gets weird because I know someone who isn't on social media at all, but her fiance is. And so the point of disdain is just like, well, hey, what are you doing? Why, and there's very valid reasons to be on social media. I'm on social media. Family's on social media. It's going to be the only way some friends and I even connect even a little bit. It's my creative outlet as well. But I think we're seeing the common denominator here as being social media is a dirty little thing sometimes.
It's very harmful. And I know for guys, I think part of the social media, I think with guys, the big problem with the internet is pornographic images,
Okay.
whether that's videos or Instagram, people showing their ass, thongs, all that sort of stuff. Guys are very visually driven when it comes to stuff. That doesn't mean we don't like, conversations and intimacy and all that, because we definitely do. But there's a huge part of our initial attraction to someone that's
Mhm.
just visually based. And I don't know, there's almost kind of like this lizard brain part of us that is just kind of always looking. And for me, nowadays, because I'm coming up now on 2 years like being free from watching pornography. The
Awesome.
amount, it, I'm a completely different person.
No,
It's
I gotta give you
absolutely
props.
insane.
That is
Yeah,
100%. I seriously, my hat is off to you. That is amazing. Great job.
thank you.
Mhm.
Well, and let me say this: it's so different now because it's like even on Instagram, like if there's people posing provocatively and stuff, I like kind of like cringe my face and I like scroll away. Like I wouldn't say I'm like a total prude or anything like that, but it's just like I just have such a different natural, and I've always had a respect for women, but there's just it's my brain chemistry now is just
That
so much more detached from this notion of like just pornographic images. And like you said, I see married men because sometimes you can see like what your friends are liking on Instagram, and I see married dudes like just their Instagram page. It's
thank you.
like Steve likes
This. And I'm like, "Oh, is
like,
he?"
and there's like 20 pictures of bikinis, and I'm like, dude, did you even know like your wife can see like what you're
I
liking
try
and
to tell
stuff?
people, I'm like, "Okay, wait," because it's now, and any man dating out there, I've got to say right now, if you and a friend and a girl that you're interested in, you're talking to her, she knows who you follow. It's instinct. We know who you follow, and then there's this whole page that shows me what you've liked. It won't be directly; it's going to show me what everyone's liking, but the one in bikinis and it's just biggest turnoff for a woman is having to compete with people that are just not real. That's the hardest thing is this person's going to
Hmm.
show their ass in a bikini. Okay, well, I can't look like that right now. And this is what you want. And then as me, as a woman, I kind of like, oh, damn it. Because I have met men like
Yes.
yourself who are able to abstain from that. And I think the best conversation I ever had, hands down, in my entire life with a man was a writer friend who is married. Oh, beautifully loyal to his wife. I loved it. Loved
Hmm.
her, put her on a pedestal, honored her. I sent him a video of someone who I found, it was just me sharing another woman who was talking on a perspective about philosophy, because me and all my writer friends, we talk philosophy 24/7. He was part of the writing community and he was Muslim. And so he and I had a lot of religious talks. It was great conversation, absolutely great conversation. And I sent him a video of this woman talking and he deleted it from our little chat. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." He's like, "I'm sorry, Amanda. She was very attractive. I couldn't watch that."
Mm.
My goodness. If I didn't just like, I wanted to go hug his wife. Like, wow. I envy that. I envy you. Like, and
Yeah.
it's not that I've had a partner cheat on me before. It's that I am still a woman and I still have some insecurities. I am not perfect. I am not, and the fact that a man, and he could have watched it and didn't have to tell me that, but he deleted that so fast. He's like, "Oh no, I've seen her before. I can't watch her. I just, I find her attractive and I don't want to look." Oh,
Yeah.
well, my God, God bless you. Like, just, I've never heard of such a thing, and it was a beautiful, and I've seen that every now and then. Well, my dad is the best thing. My dad does not see anyone other than my mom, and I remember just watching him as I grew up, because I've seen men, bark at other ladies while they're married. I've seen it all. And this is my stepdad, by the way. And I look at this man as like, he's the standard. Like, there was no woman that could flirt with him, that he had such eyes and love for my mom and still does. And their marriage is something to be absolutely adored. And so that kind of comfort is so rare and I don't see it. And so I don't think men understand how huge that is for a woman. And you just do that little thing, and my gosh, you're going to have a really happy woman at home.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this too. Do you think that I don't even know if I want to say this because it might just kind of be defeating the point, but because I think that this kind of has to do with both people too. Being secure in accepting love, I think, is a huge part of it too,
Mhm.
because I was with someone who I really loved, and I was very much the same way as your dad, like had eyes only for her and stuff. And it was kind of like as things started to get more real, or as she started noticing that like I wasn't looking at other people or anything like that, like as things started to get more real, um, it almost had the opposite effect. Like the more real it got, the more kind of the less secure she felt. Um, and it's such an important reason why too. I think if people are hurting out there
Mhm.
and they've been through past traumas, I think it's very important to heal that before looking to get into a relationship, because I think that has a very strong effect
Right.
on that.
Well, to that, it sounds like I always feel like relationships always teach us one thing. And if there's one thing I can look at from a bird's eye view, there's always one person a little bit more ready for the relationship than the other.
Hmm.
And there's always one more healed than the other. And then we get to a certain crossroads of, okay, am I going to be with you while you heal? Or am I scaring you away? Or is there too much that you need to go figure out on your own before you actually do harm to me? If that makes sense. I'm not
Hmm.
sure if that's making a lot of sense, but I waited to date for a very long time. And I remember even writing about this, like, and people had a hard time with this, but back when the writing was like in our prominent days, like I want to say 2017, 2018, I was an absolute wreck. I was healing, and I made that very apparent in my writing. And I was getting people who were falling in love with me through my writing because of how raw and real it was. And I let them, "Hey, I'm not doing you any favors. You do not want to date me. I don't even want to date myself. I am not okay." And so, and for some reason that
Yeah.
was more appealing. I don't know. Oh wow, she tells the truth. Oh my God, you're so honest. Like, no, I am a train wreck. Watch out before I bulldoze you. Like, I don't know I don't know how many more ways you want me to tell you this. I am a horrible person right now. I will bring you, like, I am in hell and I will drag you down to the depths with me.
They're like, "Oh my god,
So,
that's even more honest. I
like,
love you so
wow,
much."
you're so transparent. I think you're my soulmate. No, 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 no. As of right now, I can't even tell you my soul is here. So stop. Say it has a mate. No. Um,
Have you ever seen that meme where it's like, "Stop trying to find your soulmate and start trying to find your soul, comma,
exact.
mate."
I was there, and I no, I have zero problem saying there was a time where I was not dateable, and I came to that realization. I'm like, I'm not doing this, and that was the healthiest thing I ever did. I'm not bringing anyone down with me. And I made it a pact to myself to not even consider dating until I healed me. Okay. Then it was a whole other reality when I went out into the world. I'm like, oh, none of you guys are healed. Ew, no, ew. And I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going to be single for a very, very, very long time because no one else was doing the work. I was having, for whatever reason, I attract men who, or I was at that time attracting men who had all been cheated on. And
Mm,
all of a sudden they're bringing these patterns and I'm just like, "Whoa, I don't cheat. Why are you making me do this? Why am I jumping through this? You want me to jump through this hoop for you when we're just dating? No, 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 no. You go heal yourself." Because they're putting me at a standard and at a disadvantage because I'm A, a woman, and B, they've been through so much they have not healed from. They thought it was normal behavior for me to have to prove myself and my loyalty at such an early stage. And I'm like, no, you can't, that's not fair. So when you start thinking about it from another person's perspective, you have to say, what am I bringing to this table? Am I bringing a healthy relationship to the table? If you can say
mhm.
that, by all means, go date. If you can look someone in the eye on the first couple of dates and say, are you bringing a healthy, person to this relationship or what is your tick? Don't get me wrong, we all have PTSD. Something will come up. There are going to be triggers. There's going to be triggers. It's how you deal with those triggers as the person that you are now and how you're going to ensure that your partner knows that this is a trigger. And if you guys can talk through that, my gosh, go be happy. Seriously. So it
Well, and
sounds though, your
yeah.
relationship sounds like it was you were in the right place. She had some stuff. But I could be wrong. I don't know.
Well, and to be honest, I'm sure, like you said, when things end, it's a great opportunity to look back and say, "What did I do wrong?"
Right.
Not not a lot of people do that, and I
Give it some
knew,
time and you can look at it
yeah, but I
healed.
knew when it ended, I knew that if I didn't do that, that I was going to come undone. I just knew. I knew that. I said, "John, you have a proclivity towards depression and being hard on yourself." I was like, "You just went through heartbreak. If you don't forgive her and yourself, if you don't try to really think about what happened and find peace in it, you're going to come unraveled." And that's what I had to do. And doing that led to the best 2 years of my life of getting my shit together. That's what led to me,
Nice.
eventually giving up porn. I just, I started to realize that, and maybe writers have more of a tendency to do this, but I was pursuing kind of my own romantic ideas
Mhm.
more than I was being attentive to who someone really is.
Oh my god. Every writer, yes.
Yeah, it's yeah,
I have
and
stories, but I'm gonna
to be
hold
fair,
back.
to be fair, I think that there is a real beauty in having that idealized romantic notion of who someone could be, but it can't be the top thing. It can't be something that makes up who they are. It has to be some sort of kind of, like romantic light thing where you always see the beauty and the potential in them. That's a good way to look at it. It's
See,
always good to hold on to
but
that. Yeah,
there's
but
romanticism in that too, and so you have to
mhm,
draw it in even closer. I like how this
yeah,
person eats. Who the hell eats like that? Oh my
hmm
god, it's beautiful, it makes me giggle. How do I like this person's feet? I've never liked feet before, but when you're in love, somehow the other person's feet are beautiful and the way they walk and the way they talk. But if you actually focus on the romanticism of their potential, that's also grounds for that's dangerous grounds too, because that's a standard you're setting and you almost don't want to set that standard for them because you want who they are and who they become to be completely kind of fluid. You don't want to set an expectation for them. You don't want them to regress, but that potential word hurts too sometimes. So I've been told that. Oh, I see potential in you. It's like, what? Excuse me? Like, I don't
Well,
know. I've heard
no,
that before.
no, that's interesting, and I'm trying to think of how I think of this, and if that's what I meant. Kind of how I'm thinking of it is like, let's say, 'cause I still think that there's an element of both. Because let's say someone's struggling,
Right.
and kind of going back a little bit to like what Jordan Peterson said. I like to reference him a lot because
It's a
he's
good
someone
man
I
too.
think
Yeah.
shares a lot of good values, and I respect his authority that he's put in so much time
Yes.
into really reflecting on these things. And he's a lot older than me, so I really listen to when he says things. And when he says something, to people of like, just accept yourself as who you are. When people are struggling and really down on themselves, it can
Hmm.
be a harmful thing for them to hear because they don't like who they are.
Right.
So I think that the element of what I meant in that, in seeing the potential, is more so seeing like the beautiful heart in them, the beautiful nature in them that they might not see in themselves. So that's kind of
Very. Oh,
what I
okay. That's
meant.
beautiful. No, that's real.
Yeah.
I stand
Hmm.
by that as well. Yeah.
Yeah. That's definitely what I meant. Because I mean, potential. It's like I don't care if I am dating like supermodel hottest person. I don't care if I live in the biggest house. I don't care about numbers and hitting these crazy benchmarks and stuff. It's for me, potential is not really that. So yeah,
Right.
potential might not have been the best word, but it's um, this notion of really trying to see like the beautiful original person God made someone to be.
Right.
That's kind of what
And
it is,
allowing them to be that.
and also accepting and meeting them where they're at.
There you
I think
go.
it's the marriage between those two, because that's a
Perfect.
huge thing. It's like when people don't have a lot of experience with relationships or with communication and talking to people, they can kind of get it lost a little bit in just their pure like ideology of someone else. And then when they meet the real person, they're like, oh, like who is this person?
Mhm.
Well, it's the same person that's been there from the start, but you didn't you didn't connect it because you've been just projecting that fantasy on them for so long that now that you've actually spent time to get to know them, this is the real person.
Well, and
Yep.
imagine if everyone went into relationships with that, I think divorce would dwindle to almost nothing. I mean,
Hmm.
obviously, we wanna go into those types of relationships healed, but your partner is gonna get depression. I'm gonna get depressed. Like, it at some point, you're gonna see them at their lowest, and it's like, who are you at those times? And do you still see them for who they are, not what they're going through? You know what I mean? And so I
Hmm.
think if we all took that concept, relationships would actually be thriving. But instead, somehow, we've almost turned narcissistic in our persons well, in our relationships. There's some
Yeah.
narcissistic tendencies of me, me, me. How is he making me feel right now? It's like, well, hold on, stop. What is he going through that I don't know of? Is there something I can help you with? Will you share this with me? It's safe with me to share it with me, you know? And
Hmm.
sometimes, and I've been told this, I don't want you to fix anything. I just need to figure this out. All the more
Yeah.
power to you. When you need me or what you need from me, let me know and I got you. The end. Because men do sometimes don't want to share, and that's okay. Just let me know you're going through something, and that's where the communication comes. And I think this is where men and women handle things completely differently too. And that's where a
Hmm.
huge myriad of issues comes is when men go through something, they tend to not run to other people to figure it out like us women do. So it's
Hmm.
like, uh, I'm trying
Yeah,
to
with
not be
men, with
immediately
men, we're
offended
like,
when you don't come
with
to
men,
me.
we're like, we just need a little time. There's just stuff going on. I just need to figure things out. Like, just
Hmm.
if you can be patient with me, I can figure it out. Like, and it's kind of like that a little bit.
But
But
that needs to
I,
be spoken and not just thought
yeah,
of.
exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
So we're there.
So let me say too. I think this thing cuts out in about a minute 10 seconds.
What?
The podcast recording, but I truly think we touched on a lot of really great things, and it's to the people listening, if you're having trouble really getting into meaningful conversations, we just spoke for an hour and a half. It seems like it flew by in
Mhm.
5, 10 minutes. That's what it's like to speak with someone who you trust, who you really get to know, and who you feel comfortable sharing things with. And if you're inexperienced with really sharing that, allow yourself to be awkward at it. That's totally fine. But I think just putting in the attempt is very worth it.
Mhm. Yeah, this was easy. It felt really quick. It felt like only 5 minutes have gone by, but this right here is how things can change and things can get done, especially in friendships, relationships, what have you, is just speaking and then going inward before you speak and knowing who you are and what you bring to the table.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. As always, it was truly a pleasure to talk with you.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a great rest of your day.
Too.
All right. Bye.
Bye.